And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com, also presented in part by Yahoo Sports. Check them out in their DFS offerings. Dan Strafford, Dave Lockren, along with you on this Wednesday morning. We're going to talk the 4-game early slate. Don't forget, over on Awesemo.com, you have all of the projections, the Fantasy Cruncher Pro, you have the write-ups, you have everything you can need. So you want to sign up for that, it's going over to Awesemo.com using the promo code EARLYBIRD. We start off this Wednesday morning by checking in with one Dave Lockren. You may know him as Lofty_D, Loughy_D. Dave, how the hell are you doing?
Man, those Sixers really showed up last night, huh? What a pathetic effort that was.
So I'm gonna make an analogy for you.
Hold on. Joel Embiid, Redick, and Simmons combined to score less points than Pascal Siakam.
I mean, you had Pascal Siakam as the next heir apparent of great NBA players to start the year, right?
Well, it'd be a little better if Siakam had scored 100 points, but he scored 25.
That's fair. Well, JJ Redick has a podcast to prepare for. So, I mean,
yes, of course.
We know how tough that is. So we can at least. So my analogy of how the 76ers played was earlier in the day on Tuesday, we were hanging up pictures in our newly finished basement. And there's one section that has a wall and then a slight jut out of a what I would call a column. So probably about half a foot of a column, hanging up the picture on the wall. And I turned to leave, and I turned in quick fashion because our youngest was running in a different direction. So I turned and slammed my knee against that column. So I'm an old man. I fell to the ground and was whimpering in pain. Fine. That's not even the bad part. This is where the analogy comes in.
Yeah, I was waiting for this part.
I hit my knee so badly and so poorly that I left a streak of my jeans on the wall. Like there was a full-on blue denim streak right where my knee hit. And it's just analogous in that it's kind of like the stain on the underwear that the 76ers.
Oh God, is this where you're going? What a horrible analogy.
It was bad. They just looked disinterested. I tuned in 4 different times and wanted to get into the game. And Embiid and Simmons, and you made the point about the total points, and you said before we started recording, Embiid just looked bad. Sick or not.
I'm just so tired of hearing that he's sick. He's sick. Look, I get it. Fine. But 4 or 5 games, he's been really bad this series.
And he is a talent to watch. He's fun, and his social media presence is fantastic. But when, the chips are on the table, whatever metaphor you want to use, he hasn't shown up here.
No, and it also doesn't help when you've got a point guard that refuses to learn how to shoot. I mean, he scores 7 points. 7 points. JJ Redick scored 3 points. That's crazy.
It's a bad scene. Series not over yet. We'll see what happens.
It's a wrap.
I see what you did there. The Raptors.
Oh, that definitely was not doing that.
You're the Punisher. I mean, come on. Let's go. Let's get nuts here with our puns.
Man.
It's fun. It's Wednesday morning. We have a short slate for early slate. Don't forget, honestly, we have a ton of content for the early slate, but we also have a ton of content for the late. You'll get the MLB strategy show. You'll get the deep dive. You'll get the deeper dive for the late slate. DKs typically are a jumping off point for this podcast. Looks like they have higher dollar, bigger tournaments. So the smaller dollar tournaments that you typically see, the $3, $4, maybe even the $5 don't seem to be present. You have $12 and $15 gigantic tournaments on this Wednesday slate. So if you're someone who has some bankroll management issues, maybe one to consider going even down to the $1 or the 25-cent tournaments. If you're someone who wants to pay up, maybe you go above the $12 and $15 tournament because these are the large ones with top-heavy payouts to attract the masses. But you do have some impressive payouts both in the early and late slates for the $12 and $15 tournaments that they have running on DK. We'll check in on FanDuel. And as always, really on the strategy show and on the deeper dive, Josh, Dave, Adam, all do a good job of incorporating those Yahoo price points. I know EMAC is on top of those as well as we go through to try to find the values over there on Yahoo Sports. and their DFS offerings. So, Dave, a 4-game slate: Texas, Pittsburgh, Arizona, Tampa Bay, Washington, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, St. Louis. 12:35 first pitch on Wednesday on through to 1:15. Kind of nice in the sense that all games are pretty much starting around the same time. So you're going to get a very condensed slate for these 4 games. Do you want to go game by game, or do you want to go position by position?
We got 4 games. We can hit them by game.
All right, let's do that. So we're going to start Texas and Pittsburgh. It's Nick Kingham and your favorite pitcher, Shelby Miller.
Shelby Miller.
To pronounce correctly his God-given name, Shelby Miller. His parents call him Shelby. But the fact of the matter...
I wouldn't be so sure about that anymore.
He goes home to Thanksgiving dinner. Hey, Shelby, pass me the potatoes, please. Let's talk through here a game in Arlington. Oh, sorry, in Pittsburgh. Kingham, Miller. We get the pitcher batting from, so I would love to say that's a positive for Miller, but he's just not a good pitcher. He just isn't. And so I'm trying to pull a positive out for him in any way. But
I mean, it's better than Arlington.
Right. And it's better than facing a DH and all of the things that go with it. But how does this one stand out to you? Kingham at 7,300. I will observe, I think we've all observed, DK's pricing has compacted. They've brought down the top end. They've raised the mid-tier. They're trying to make it really difficult to make some of these pitching decisions, even on a shorter slate. How does this game break out to you?
I mean, my assumption is going to be that the Pirates bats will still be pretty popular on this slate. You know, I think that will be the case. It could be wrong, but right now they have a 4.9 implied total, second highest on the slate. You know, we'll get to the Cardinals in a moment, but they're going up against a guy who I think is better than, you know, the Vegas lines are looking right now. And then outside of that, it's hard to fall in love with really any offenses. So I think it's going to be a pretty popular Pirates team. I don't have an issue with it. I don't believe in Shelby Miller. So, you know, just looking over his stuff from the jump, a lot of things pop out at you. You know, he's thrown 23 innings this year. He's striking out less than 5 batters per 9. Dan, he has a 10.8% strikeout rate and a 5.5% swinging strike rate. I mean, those are those are really, really, really bad. You'd be hard pressed to find many starting pitchers with numbers worse than that. As a matter of fact. I'm not sure you will right now. You know, he throws this year. He's throwing his fastball 71%. Basically, fastball, curveball. That's pretty much all he's got this year.
So, sorry to interrupt, but his cutter, what's deemed as his cutter by Statcast and Baseball Savant. Do you know what the slugging percentage against his cutter is in 2019?
1,000.
It's 1. Yeah, my goodness, it's been that bad.
Granted, I think
he hasn't thrown it much. Absolutely.
He's thrown it 27 times. So, I mean, yeah, he's thrown it 27 times. He has 1 whiff on the pitch. It's getting ground balls when it is not hit out of the park. But yeah, isolated slugging against that's interesting. A 0 ISO. Huh. Funny how slugging and batting average are different, huh?
Yep.
Huh. Either way, there's really nothing about Shelby Miller that should encourage anybody here outside of the fact that it's a good ballpark for pitchers.
Right.
Yeah, I don't buy in anything he's doing, man. And how can you? You know, he's relegated to throwing 2 pitches now. He's allowing almost 50% hard contact, 41% ground ball, fly balls. Dude, I can't help but like these Pittsburgh bats a lot. I think they will be popular, but what are you going to do? Another thing, too, is they're not going to be that cheap. Like Josh Bell is really expensive. You know, Frazier isn't, though, depending on who's in the lineup. You know, Colin Moran. Polanco's pretty cheap. Cervelli is $3K. So they're all actually really cheap outside of Josh Bell. And I think Polanco or Marte reasonably priced at $4,800. It's not that bad. A couple of them are expensive, but that's it. On the other side of this one, you have Nick Kingham, who has, I think, he's pitched exclusively out of the bullpen this year.
I believe so. Yeah. Yep.
I don't necessarily know what his pitch count is going to look like. It's kind of a weird. So with what is it? We have Tyon and Archer down. So Kingham has started before. He threw 57. Right. He threw 57 pitches 4 or 5 days ago. So my guess is that he probably can throw like 75, 80 pitches. That wouldn't be much of a surprise to me. He's striking out over a batter per inning out of the bullpen, but mind you, as a reliever, that's a little bit different. You can throw harder. You don't have to throw as many variations of pitches. Right. And he's still been hit pretty good, albeit not many home runs, but still, I'm not huge on Kingham. And I think, this guy has a long way to go before he's somebody that we start to have any confidence in, even though he, has decent strikeout numbers. So I don't mind the lefties here from the Rangers either. Last thing we'll do is look at Kingham's splits going back to last year. So against lefties, he's allowing a .416 WOBA with 11 home runs and 2.56 home runs per nine, only 15% strikeouts and a 4% K- BB rate. That to me is why lefties here against Kingham are very interesting. And again, I think he probably, unless he gets hammered early on, unless he gets shelled, probably throws around 80 pitches, 75, 80 pitches.
Yeah, it's a situation where Dave just read off the numbers, but go further, 7.12 FIP, 5.66 XFIP. You read the home run per nine, but is also just striking out 6.52 lefties per nine while walking 4.66 lefties per nine in his career. That's going to be a formula for a disaster for Nick Kingham. So while this game may not stand out from a park perspective, it is an over-under of 9 in Pittsburgh, which should prove to be a pretty high number for PNC Park. It's supposed to be pretty warm, 77 degrees near start of this game. Could have some gigantic upside when all is said and done. We have 3 other games to go through. There are some offenses that we'll target, but these are 2 pitchers that clearly will be targeted pretty heavily. Dave mentioned Polanco, and I think obviously you deal with the likes of Joey Gallo. He's 5,700 in Pittsburgh, right? All things being equal, that's a crazy price point when you consider the park. And so it still might be worth it on the slate. We haven't done roster construction as of yet, but that's a pretty high price point. Chu is at 5,100. Mazar at 4,400 has a bit of upside, but still, even so, is a price point that is pretty high to consider on DK. We'll check in on FanDuel in a little bit just to make sure we're citing those price points as well. Ready to move on to Arizona and Tampa Bay next. And this is a game, pitching-wise, you have Charlie Morton versus Robbie Ray. That sounds like a pretty good matchup, right? Robbie Ray has pitched fairly well for Arizona. There are some holes in his game. We know he has a propensity at times to walk a bit more batters than you'd prefer. We also know that sometimes he's not hitting the zone as much as we'd like, so the strikeouts aren't there, but the upside for 7 to 10 strikeouts is possible. Tampa Bay has been really solid this year. On the other side, Charlie Morton has been one of those arms for Tampa Bay that has been really, really solid. And the last 2 times out has put up 23.3 and 27.4 DraftKings points respectively. And on this slate, Morton at 10-1 is expensive, but at least reasonably priced for what you might get from him comparatively to the other pitchers. How do you feel about Charlie Morton and Robbie Ray on this matchup?
So I think this is one of the spots where pitching comes into play pretty heavily, especially on a slate that, isn't going to give us all that much. I mean, I'm not going to the Pittsburgh game, or I'm not going to Pittsburgh or Texas, right? So question is, where are we going to go? Well, there are a couple spots actually, and I'll get to one later. But I think in this one, Charlie Morton's a very good pitcher. He gets a lot of strikeouts. I have respect for this Arizona team But on a 4-game slate, I'll go with the skill, with the talent in Charlie Morton. You're talking 30% strikeouts this season, right? Very close to, if not considered elite, 12, almost 13% swinging strike rate. We know that Charlie Morton he changed his game when he came to Houston, and that has carried over to Tampa Bay, right? And you look at the way that he uses his pitches now, and he's just different. He throws way less of the two-seamer, which is what we like to see. He has thrown way more four-seamer, which we also like to see, and he relies on a really nasty curve. So you wonder where he's getting these strikeouts from. 22% whiff rate on that curveball. It's beautiful. And then, he mixes in a bunch of different pitches. The slider, he's getting 20% on that, 12% on the four-seamer, which is nice because, four-seamers, generally you don't get a ton of misses on it unless you're like DeGrom or Blake Snell, or Max Scherzer. I have no issues with Morton here. Would I prefer a little bit of a better lineup? Sure, but 3.4 run implied total. He's a pretty heavy favorite. I definitely like him here. Now, as far as Robbie Ray goes, I don't have any issues with Robbie Ray. His price is a little bit higher than I would have liked, but he's not at a hitter-friendly park, which I think should benefit him. I do want to know though, unless you have it pulled up, unless you have some splits pulled up, what the Rays look like against lefties this year. I feel like they haven't faced a lot of lefties.
Here, I do have lefty pitchers 2019 stats. I'll sort by K percentage just because that's easy to do by. Rays on
That's what I'm looking for anyway.
Yeah, Rays on the year.
29.3%.
Yep. 297 plate appearances, 29.3%, a 306 WOBA, and a 127 ISO.
So not a lot of power against them. Not a ton of plate appearances, understandable. But going back to last season, 1,234 plate appearances, they walked a lot, and I do remember that pretty vividly. But they struck out the second highest clip in the entire league against lefties last year. This is their active roster. So granted, it's a little bit different. They've made some changes, but a lot of it is still intact. That does have me a little bit more intrigued by Robbie Ray. Now, another thing too is when you look at this Rays team, Brandon Lau, lefty, Nate Lowe.
You nailed it.
Yeah,
you got it.
I got you, bro. I got you. G-Man Choi, lefty. Kevin Kiermaier, lefty. So like your righties, Yandy Diaz has been good. And you got like Daniel Robertson, Willie Adames, Mike Zunino. Yeah, they have some stray and Tommy Pham, some stray pop, but not a lot. Like outside of Tommy Pham and Diaz, most of the good hitters on this team are lefties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Robbie Ray definitely makes more sense here, and ownership plays a role in a 4-game slate, no doubt. That's why there's a guy we'll talk about in a little bit that I think could be very interesting. But Robbie Ray is a guy that could go out here and give us 10 Ks, and that's pretty nice to know. I also don't think from a ceiling standpoint, him and Morton are pretty much in that same tier. So you're getting $1,000 discount on him if you went to Robbie Ray.
4-game slate. I'm not sure I'm playing a ton of cash games. That's just my personal way of approaching the variance of what could happen on a 4-game slate. But do you play Ray and Morton, or would you advise against playing Ray and Morton in the same lineup?
No, it wouldn't be because of the win points. It would just be because I'm not sure it's necessary on this slate.
All right.
But it wouldn't be because of the wins, yeah.
Any one-off bats stand out to you between the Rays or the Diamondbacks that are worth mentioning in either of these matchups?
Yeah, Zunino has power, but Ray's just done a phenomenal job of limiting home runs outside of Chase Field, for a while now. Like, you have Yandy Diaz and these guys, but none of them stand out as premier options. I think you could always make a case for somebody like David Peralta just because he's been fantastic, but Charlie Morton's another one of those guys who, when it comes to facing lefties, it's not like he just becomes a shit can. Charlie Morton can still go out there and mow down lefties. You look at him last season and Charlie Morton across the entirety of the year, 308 WOBA to lefties. It's still averages like 310. So it's still at or below league average against lefties, and then very good against righties. He also didn't give up much power at all. 1.08 home runs per nine, struck him out at 36%. So yeah, it's not a great game for hitters.
All right, let's continue our roll along through this 4-game slate. We go next to a contest that pretty straightforward as far as the DFS perspective. You have Washington and Milwaukee. I say that because you have Brandon Woodruff and Jeremy Hellickson. I see Hellickson as one of the most targeted pitchers on the slate, along with Texas and Pittsburgh. You have Shaw, you have Moustakas, you have Yelich clearly for Milwaukee. Do you see this differently, or is this a game where the Brewers have the massive upper hand?
I do think they have the upper hand. I also think that Brandon Woodruff is pretty interesting here. I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. I posted a tweet the other day that Max Scherzer leads the league in K-minus BB rate, XFIP, and Sierra. Okay? All three of them. All stats that you want to lead the league in, right? Pointing out that the guy has had some bad luck this season, which I do believe has been the case up until last start, at least. He also has the second highest XFIP among all starting pitchers. I mean, think about that. The second highest XFIP in the league is Max Scherzer, a month and a half into it. That to me is pretty insane, or a month and a week plus into it is pretty wild. Now, can you guess who has the highest BABIP in the league?
Are we using context clues for our guessing currently, or?
Brandon Woodruff.
Yeah.
Yes.
I felt like I was being set up. So yes, Brandon Woodruff.
Brandon Woodruff. This, at least it was at the time,
sure.
By the way.
Yep.
And that was only a few days ago. Brandon Woodruff. So when you actually dig into it, this is why stuff like BABIP, a low BABIP does not mean a pitcher, for anyone that's relatively new to the stats, it does. A really low BABIP actually it does not mean the pitcher is amazing. It means that they're actually due to see some regression. A really high BABIP generally means that they're going to see some positive regression. An average BABIP is around that 310 area, and Woodruff is almost at 400 this season. Now, he's also striking out 28% of batters. He has a 21% K-minus BB rate. He's allowing a 290 batting average and a 396 BABIP. By the way, his XFIP is 355, right? Like there's no way that it should continue at that rate. There just isn't. 365 Sierra. Like all of these numbers that would suggest we're going to see some positive regression, all of them point in his favor. So I think Woodruff is kind of interesting here. We're still dealing with the Washington team that they did get Rendon back. They did. But they're still without Trey Turner. They're still without Juan Soto. They're still without Matt Adams. They're still without Ryan Zimmerman. I mean, these guys are down a decent amount of hitters. There are a decent amount of strikeouts here. And I think you could do worse than Woodruff on a slate where he's not that expensive. And believe it or not, the Nats have a sub-4 implied run total at Miller Park.
So latest I'm seeing, to Dave's point, Woodruff still at 396 on the BABIP. Scherzer at 377. Ivan Nova is second overall at 382. So you take that into consideration, along with now Nova pitches to contact. So you can talk about BABIP and batting average on balls in play to spell it out. Nova makes sense from a high BABIP perspective because a ton of balls are being put in play. He's not striking a lot of guys out. He's not doing a lot to stay away from contact. Woodruff at 396 also has a 20.6% K-minus walk and a 11.15 K per nine on the year. All numbers Dave was running through. On a 4-game slate, makes a ton of sense to me. It makes a ton of sense in this matchup. A lineup for the Nationals that is a bit run down, one that you may see some upside, at least in Woodruff. On the other side, do you see any upside for Hellickson? Do you see on a 4-game slate a flyer here, or is this just somebody to target against and target against heavily?
Not against this Milwaukee team. No, I will play Scherzer and Strasburg against them happily. Don't care if it's at Miller Park. Jeremy Hellickson, not so much. It's funny because the 2 really solid starts he's had this year have both come against the Phillies. I don't know what it is, but I mean, outside of that, the guy has been beat up pretty bad. You're going to Miller Park, where you have to go up against the likes of Christian Yelich and a slew of lefties. That is not going to do him well. Mike Moustakas is smoking righties this year. I just don't see how he gets out of this one alive, Dan. He's got what is it? Where's the total? Total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. 5.3. It's the highest on the slate. So no surprise there. I was missing it because I wasn't looking at the top one for some reason. But yeah, the Jeremy Hellickson's doesn't miss enough bats to escape this one. Allowing a 427 weighted on base average to lefties this year, a 304 ISO, 304, 2.7 home runs, 12% strikeouts. What's his swinging strike rate against lefties? Care to take a guess?
2,
right? 5.9.
All right.
I mean, those numbers are brutal. And look, I get it. It hasn't been a very long season thus far, but Hellickson's just not that good, right? He gets no ground balls against lefties either. He's also giving up 25% line drives. This is one of those spots where Hellickson likely struggles. Last year, 17% strikeouts against lefties. I just don't see this being a case where he's going to be okay here. And like you said, Milwaukee's going to be very popular. There's no question. But even if you're getting away from them, I would try and be different elsewhere. I don't think Hellickson is the answer by playing him to get leverage.
Yeah, it's tough to see a world where the Brewers aren't at least part of your plans. And that means maybe getting into different parts of the lineup. Travis Shaw was batting 7th on Tuesday night. Maybe that's somebody on Wednesday who moves up the lineup because of a day game after a night game. Maybe they move some pieces around, different leadoff hitter. Maybe Lorenzo King gets a day off and Arcia leads off. But all things to be considered as you go through this matchup and how exactly it breaks down. Let's break down this final game, which could have some weather, seeing some potential storms in the area, not necessarily in St. Louis itself, but some wind could be involved for this contest between the Cardinals and the Philadelphia Phillies. It's Jared Eickhoff and Jack Flaherty. Now, Eickhoff has been off to a very solid start for Philadelphia. He has an upside game, 2 games going against the Marlins, not surprising there, and had a solid outing last time out, 7 Ks, 3 walks over, I don't even know how many innings. I think he was 6 2/3 or 5 2/3 maybe. Five flat.
Yeah, he got pinch hit for after the 5th. I think they probably would have let him go one more. He was getting a lot of missed bats in that game, but he also got a bit wild as well. He had some spots where he should have been a lot more controlled and was unable to do that. So it ran his pitch count up in a couple of innings. But there were also a couple of things that he did that were pretty encouraging too, Dan. And I think people, not people, but there are some. I hear a lot of time like, oh, Eickhoff's no good, this and that. Well, the truth is, whether he's good or not, he has good strikeout stuff. Adam and I talked about this the other day where I was like, man, Eickhoff looks good tonight. And I liked him a lot that night just because I didn't want to play Musgrove against Oakland. I still did a decent bit, and it didn't end well. But Eickhoff, I had texted him. I was like, dude, Eickhoff looks great. He's like, yeah, he's good. And I said, I don't know if he's good or if he just has good stuff. And I said, I know that sounds weird, but do you know what I mean by that? He's like, yeah, I know what you mean. What I mean by is like, he has good stuff, but I don't know if he's figured it all out yet to actually make himself good. But he throws 3 pitches exclusively, right? Four-seamer, cutter, and curve. Four-seamer, curve, and cutter in that order of usage. The the cutter this year has a 20% whiff rate. The curveball has a 16% whiff rate. Whiff per swing rate, you're looking at 36 and 47%. Like he does miss a lot of bats, Dan. And I mean, I think that's what we're looking for, right? The question is, against a team like St. Louis, do you have any faith in him to be able to do that? And by the way, I mentioned yeah, so never mind. I was going to dive deeper into something, but I'll save that for the deep dive. I don't know at that price point if I feel comfortable doing that. I mean, Robbie Ray is $500 more.
Right.
And Woodruff is $900 cheaper. I think Eichhoff's kind of in no man's land.
What about Flaherty?
So that's an interesting one, right? Pitching's really interesting on this slate, huh?
Listen, we've used DK as our jumping off point, and DraftKings has made a clear choice to, and I said contract, and I mean contract from the high end and contract from the low end and make it much more difficult in the what I call the mid range to make choices. They've even done it on this slate. So you have a very concentrated price point that you need to make choices around, and I think Flaherty falls right in there on this 4-game slate.
Yeah. So Flaherty gets a lot of strikeouts, doesn't walk a lot of batters. Against this Phillies team, I actually think this could be a decent spot. It's always a high upside and a high ceiling, low floor spot when you're facing the Phillies. For example, Miles Michael has had a pretty tough matchup. He goes 7 scoreless. Cardinals win 6-0 on Monday. Tuesday, Dakota Hudson gets shelled. Phillies, it's bottom of the 9th right now, but 11-1, the Phillies are leading. I mean, you know what I mean? There haven't been many gray area games here. It's been a lot of black and white, and I think it's worth considering that. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to look towards somebody like Jack Flaherty. And here's the biggest reason. So the Phillies lineup has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 righties, but those righties are McCutchen, Segura, Hoskins, Real Muto, and Franco. All of whom either hit for power or can hit for average. I guess we'll say McCutchen's been a little bit of both, or a lot less average, but we still know he's got some pop. And then you have Harper from the left side, and Odubel Herrera swings over anything, and then Cesar Hernandez. But you're going to get 5 righties, and you're going to get the pitcher, so 6. Jack Flaherty has a 35% K rate against righties and a 2.52 xFIP. Last season, in that breakout year, he struck righties out at 33% with a 3.18 xFIP. If Jack Flaherty is going to have a good game, it's going to come by way of strikeouts.
Right.
And he'll at least face a lot of righties, which is, in my opinion, what he needs to do the most damage, because his splits in terms of strikeouts are pretty extreme.
All right. So as we close out the pod, at least for present tense, and we turn towards the deep dive that you write for the night slate, we do have MLB strategy show. We'll have plenty of chatter over in Slack chat. We'll have projections. We'll have ownership over at awesemo.com. Any bats from this game that stand out? We talk Flaherty. We talk Eichhoff as at least manageable pitchers, guys who have upside. Are there any bats from St. Louis or from Philadelphia that are at least top of mind for you on this slate?
Just because Eichhoff has been prone to kind of unravel at times, he's pulled it back together, but it's been tough. Like, I'm talking several trips to the mound and single innings we've seen already this season. I'm not opposed to a St. Louis stack here. It's because there's a lot of good bats. The 4.7 run total means that you could see this ownership higher. And then I might actually consider some Jared Eichhoff, because he strikes righties out at 34%. And early on in the season is holding them to a 183 WOBA, no power whatsoever, 2 doubles, no homers, no triples, nothing. It's a righty heavy lineup. So that's another spot where if Vegas totals have St. Louis popping for a lot of people and you see that projected ownership really high, Eichhoff could be someone I consider. I just don't love his price point is all that kind of concerns me a little bit. But I like both sides of it. It depends on the ownership, and that's the honest answer there.
Yep. Bryce Harper still 4,500 on the slate. Had a very big day on Tuesday night.
Grand slam.
Dakota Hudson, a vastly different pitcher than Jack Flaherty. Hudson has struggled mightily against lefties in his major league career. I will say this, though. Flaherty has struggled with the long ball in his career. And if that rears its ugly head here, Harper clearly stands out. But you get Rhys Hoskins and McCutchen and all of these power bats for Philadelphia could have a very, very big day. And this would be where I differentiate a little bit.
He's about 8 home runs already.
Yep. Yeah, it's up there. And for his career, he's up over a home run per 9 against both sides of the plate. So not...
way over a home run per 9.
Yeah.
That seems to be his one flaw.
So if it goes wrong for Flaherty, it's going to go wrong in pretty large fashion. So the Philadelphia Phillies here could see some gigantic upside. Find Dave over on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. Find me at Dan Strafford. And then, of course, it's at Awesemo_com. You find Dave's write-up, which is called The Deep Dive, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, on Awesemo.com, behind the paywall. So you need to sign up. Use that promo code EARLYBIRD for 50% off your first month. Don't forget Dave's over on Sirius XM Fantasy on Saturday and Sunday. That's Sirius 210, XM 87.
Check it out.
Of course, you can find plenty of content right here on the DFS Early Bird, presented by Awesemo.com.